Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm TWB. We're in the middle of a spirited debate on the BP trial. It finally went to trial after settlement talks failed. I want to bring Art Rocker into the conversation. He is the chairman of Operation People for Peace. Art, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for having me.
We got you. I know we don't have you for long, so I just want to get right to it.
Sure.
What do people in the Gulf expect to get from this trial? And if BP is found not guilty, are they prepared for that? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's not really about what BP is prepared for. It's what the people.
Yeah, what are the people prepared for? That's what I meant to say. Thank you.
Is prepared for. And as you well know, the BP oil spill that occurred on April 20, 2010, there was over 4.9 billion barrels of oil spilled into the Gulf of Mexico. It devastated $146 billion seafood industry. It halting a $50 billion cash economy and killing 11 rig workers, including 17 more individuals, and leaving many thousands and thousands of people homeless, unemployed, and ill. Now, we believe that there are 4 issues relevant to this oil spill. One was the spill was predicted long before it happened. In other words,
what's the second issue?
BP already knew about this spill. BP already knew that rig is going to blow long before it happened. Number 2, BP has a culture of carelessness, according to Transocean, according to the Justice Department, and this is how they end up in court. 3, British Petroleum was blind by the fact of his profits first and safety was last. And 4, BP treated the spill like others in themselves, like other areas where they have gone into, particularly in Africa, where there is a spill there that has been disastrous, that has killed thousands of people, particularly in the area of jobs, fishing, and what have you. And here on the Gulf Coast, we must recognize that the Gulf Coast region, that $146 billion seafood industry, was started on the backs of poor families hundreds of years ago, and poor businessmen developed the seafood industry in this area.
So let me ask you a question, Art. So what are the people of the Gulf Coast prepared to do if BP is found not guilty in the civil trial?
Well, it's like you asking me, what does people do when the 11 rig workers went to work and they died? What does their family do? What grief do they have? What sorrows do they have? What do they do? I don't know what they do.
Just because I know from your background you have a different perspective from the Gulf Coast that we don't. So I'm trying to gain some insight into that.
What we're looking at is a devastation that has destroyed not only the Gulf Coast region, it has destroyed all of America now. The jobs that was lost at one time on the Gulf Coast has spread it all over America due to this industry.
All right, Art.
It's disaster.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, and we'll see what happens with the trial and the future of the Gulf Coast. Thank you very much. Panel thoughts? Anyone agree, disagree with Art Rocker? I mean, I was just trying to get an idea of, if the people on the Gulf Coast don't get the money they're anticipating from this trial, I mean, what happens? I mean, is there enough money? and I don't think there is. And I mean, and where does the Gulf Coast stand now environmentally? I mean, we're being told that we won't know the effects of this for 10 to 15 years, really.
Well, I think that's probably right. I think we won't know the real effects. And I think you're looking at, as Art said, a short-term drop in unemployment. A lot of jobs lost, a lot of businesses lost. I don't know if they'll ever come back. They may just move. I mean, think about what happened after Katrina. A lot of people stayed, but a lot did leave,
Right.
and have not come back yet, or are starting to come back little by little. So what I think may happen is that you'll start to see a lot of the folks that were down there and making their livelihoods down there, they'll actually just start to leave the region and search for other work.
Why is it so important that we discuss it? I mean, we don't live in the Gulf, but why should this be paramount?
Because this isn't the first time this has happened, and it's not going to be the last time it's happened. I mean, you've always had, there's a long-standing tradition in our culture that you've got the corporation that abuses the workers. The workers are the ones that get hurt. I know you're looking at me and getting your response together, but this goes all the way back to the Rockefellers and the Ludlow mine disaster. It happened before, it's going to happen again, and we've got to keep tabs on it.
Dee Dee?
I think the oil industry is important, and we need to be supportive, and they're paying to try to help the situation in the Gulf, and the Gulf will be just fine.
But one thing I've got to bring up, and you know, Dee Dee, it's money can't solve everything. It can't.
But that's what the people are asking for.
That's what we're asking
That's what they're wanting.
Because
so
that's what we do in this country. When there's a wrong, we make reparations by money.
that's what you're asking for, and you're saying it's not
because
solving
that's
everything.
the
Well, then
only
don't ask
thing
for it.
that we can have reparations on. You are not going to bring back
Then
their
just put your
livelihood.
point.
All right, guys, I don't mean to cut you off, but I have two more people that I want to throw into the boxing ring with you guys. We have two more lovely guests joining us via Skype. We should have Derrick Evans, who is the managing advisor of the Gulf Coast Fund. There he is. And next to him is Cherri Foytlin. She's from LA. She's a journalist and also an author. I love the title of your book. Can you repeat it for us, Cherri?
Spill It, the truth about it, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill.
Spill it. The truth about the spill. So, Cherri, spill it. First off, spill it in terms of I understand you guys are attending a conference today. Tell us about that and what you hope to achieve in terms of the trial and the BP progression.
Yeah, hopefully we're just trying to get some sort of disclosure of truth about what's really happened, first of all. And then secondly, hopefully enough to clean up this mess down here that we're continuing to see. You know, still have a lot of animals coming in, higher mortality rates, still have a lot of oil coming in, large tar paddies, and people that are still affected economically, and sickness, especially with cleanup workers and the children that were in the area of the spill at the time.
I mean, and if you could, Derrick, just sort of paint the picture for us, sort of the impact that the spill is still having on lives down there currently. I mean, where do we stand? Because again, we're in New York. You know, people are all over the world who really are just seeing images, but put it into words what it's like to be there.
Well, I think the main thing is that all of the public discourse that has occurred since the Deepwater Horizon rig exploded has frankly really just scratched the surface. It's just the tip of the iceberg of the community and ecosystem impacts and problems that have been created, some of which, most of which, aren't even acknowledged, never mind, you know, prescripted or addressed.
Like what?
Well, Cherri just mentioned, for instance, the very large number of people who live along the Gulf Coast from Alabama to Texas who are very sick. Former cleanup workers, people who live near places where a lot of the oil washed on shore, even vacationing beachgoers have gotten sick and shown symptoms that experts relate to toxicological exposures, but that's not a part of any major discourse about BP and its impacts or remedy. There's also, you know, there's some mention to some degree, but it doesn't. Most of these conversations, they don't go deep enough. You know, whether you're talking about lost incomes and livelihoods.
So I don't mean to interrupt you, but let's go deeper then. How are sort of the communities along the Gulf coming together to solve these problems from an ecological perspective?
Well, one of the ways that we are able to come together is because of the Gulf Coast Fund for Community Renewal and Ecological Health, which was created after Katrina, to basically support and organize across state lines the highly vulnerable and impacted communities of the environmental and social catastrophes that actually happen frequently on the Gulf Coast, and that the BP disaster was sort of like the grandmama of them all. And we've been able, through that network of relationships, to do things like initiate the provision of the Restore Act that ensures that 80% of the Clean Water Act fines, whatever it ends up being that BP pays, don't just go to the general, U.S. Treasury pool, but instead are returned to the Gulf states to actually do the work of repairing the damage that occurred here.
Something I wanted to ask you, at this point, are we seeing a comeback in terms of the environment and the wildlife down there? Any sort of progress at all?
I think there has been a comeback in some areas. It seems like the farther away you get from the incident itself, but in particular in South Louisiana and South Mississippi, since there hasn't been a real, I think, a combatant to the issue that's still there. I mean, it's still there, and until we acknowledge what's really happening on the ground, there's not going to be a fix to that until we really go in and look. And unfortunately, scientifically, we haven't had the support that we need, because this is the largest environmental disaster in American history, in the oil industry history. We've never seen this before. They didn't know how to fix it, and they don't know how to deal with it now, even 3 years later.
Yeah, and we see like large numbers, a spike in sea mammals, dolphins and turtles washing up dead on the beach in epic historic proportions, which we have actually had government agencies that are responsible for figuring out what's causing that say to us that, ludicrous things like, well, that was caused by local fishermen fishing without turtle exclusion devices and drowning turtles. Well, no, it's because of BP's oil, and they come up with all this like pseudoscience and then throw it back at us. I'm not a scientist. I don't want to be a scientist, and I don't want to be responsible for producing the data that proves what common sense and human experience.
Right, you just have to look around you.
Fault.
Right.
And it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Just
honestly, the hardest part is trying to get over the sort of propaganda that's been put out there that everything's fine, and this multi-billion-dollar campaign that BP put out there, and it's just I mean to make the point here that BP hurt the Gulf Coast, but they also hurt America and hurt the world too, because this could have been the significant situation that changed the way that we do things in this country and led us into a new economy, into a green economy, a sustainable economy. It could have helped not just the Gulf Coast, but the rest of the world. And by BP's, exclusion of letting those facts come out, which we really hope this trial will do. That's all I personally want.
You want the facts, right?
I want the truth of what happened to come out. I want changes to be made within the industry. I want, new innovations that will protect our coast, our peoples, our wildlife into the future.
All right, guys. Well, I want to thank you for your time. Derrick Evans and Cherri Foytlin, really appreciate your insight and your perspective. And good luck. We hope to see some change sooner than later. Thank you. All right, guys, I can't get your final thoughts because we have to go to break. But think about them and, hum them to yourselves. When we return to Fresh Outlook, we're completely changing gears. We're going to be tackling Hollywood and the White House on a much lighter note. Does Washington determine who takes home the Academy Awards? I've often asked myself that question. We'll also tell you who managed to upstage Jack Nicholson. No easy feat. That's next. Stay with us. You're watching Fresh Outlook.